Good morning and welcome to the Celtic Way morning briefing for Friday, September the 30th. And finally, the club football's back. With me today to preview Celtic's return to Premiership action against Motherwell at Parkhead on Saturday, it's Herald sports writer Graeme McGarry. How's tricks, Graeme? You good?
Not too bad, mate, not too bad. Sorry, I'm just saying a wee bit windswept and interesting. Popped out for a coffee, wild outside. But no, happy to be back to the club football, mate.
Good stuff. All good here as well, despite this awful weather. But before we get right into the game and other things, I want to chat to you about. Can I just remind everybody it's £1 for 2 months of full access to the website. So I'll put the link in the description, which I forgot to do yesterday. You'll have noticed, or maybe you won't have noticed. www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. And rather than just these videos on the YouTube or the podcast app, however you listen to it, there's a heap of other stuff on there, including writing, such as big interviews, features, tactical and data analysis, all sorts on there. So why not give it a go? £1 after all. Anyway, Graeme, Celtic v Motherwell, shall we?
Yes, let's go.
Right, I think got the elephant in the room here. Celtic are technically winless in 3 in all competitions. Motherwell winless in just 2. So does that mean Celtic are the underdogs?
Motherwell got with the favourites, mate. No, I think it's a good game for Celtic to come back to, I think. And the reason being is because I think it'll be the polar opposite of what the St Mirren game was. If anyone's seen Motherwell recently, Stevie Hamill's got them playing some really, really good football. Open, expansive football. And I don't think he'll change his mentality that much going to Celtic Park, because I think he's got a set way of playing now. It's kind of the antithesis of the way they played last year, I guess. And the good news for Celtic in that is they do leave gaps. You know, Celtic have never really found it that hard to play through Motherwell in the last couple of years. I don't think, but I think this time there will be, a lot of opportunity to actually play their football. I don't think Motherwell will be the same kind of deep lying block that they faced against St Mirren. I don't think they'll be as physical as St Mirren were either. So there should be plenty of space to play football. And I think Celtic will probably make use of that space.
You say that Celtic haven't found it difficult to play through Motherwell. I had a wee look, obviously, as I do for these kind of previews. It's been 1 goal, I think Motherwell have scored in the last 5 games against Celtic. The aggregate's 15-1, right? Which doesn't really surprise people. I don't know, because there was a 6-0 and all that in there as well. But at Parkhead, Celtic have won 12 in a row, scored 3 or more in 7 of those 12, and Motherwell have only scored at all in 3 of them. Do you remember the last time Motherwell took anything from Celtic at Parkhead?
I think it'll be Louis Moult double.
It is, Louis Moult double, 2015. December 2015, Motherwell 1-2-1, Louis Moult scored a double. So, really, if what you're saying about Stevie Hamill's too, that actually bodes even better for Celtic, that maybe that record will go on. And I know Alan Morrison, I'll put the link up, I've done our in-depth preview, looking at the kind of underlying data and stuff for the site today, and he's convinced me it's going to be high scoring. But listening to you say about Stevie Hamill, which we'll come on to a wee bit more now, makes me think it might be high scoring, but all in Celtic's favour in a way.
Maybe what I would say is Motherwell are dangerous. They really are. I mean, if anyone saw the game against Hearts, I know it was 3-0 to Hearts in the end, but Motherwell absolutely battered them. I mean, I don't know what the underlying number said, but in fact, Alan's piece this morning, I think Motherwell might have much higher XG in that. But
basically, Craig Gordon was the difference, is what he says. He'd made 5 saves and kept a lot better chances out than what Hearts actually scored from, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that would ring true to me from what I've seen in the game. I think that, Motherwell, some poor finishing, some great goalkeeping, but up until the kind of final third were really good. So if Kevin Van Veen, who's obviously their danger man, is in form, which he's been out of form the last couple of games, but he's a dangerous player. And Motherwell, I quite fancy them to get a goal. I think going forward, they're actually very dangerous, but I do think they will leak at the other end as well, because the chances they give up, I would imagine they're pretty high quality as well from what I've seen. So I think Celtic will make hay in terms of attacking, but I do think they can trouble Celtic at the back. So it's not a gimme. I think Celtic will need to be firing up front, but I think Celtic will at least score maybe at least 2, maybe 3, and it could be more.
Alan actually mentions Kevin Van Veen specifically in his match preview. I know you're saying he's maybe been off the boil the last couple of games, but his underlying threat and stuff, Alan kind of singles him out as, especially with potentially, we'll come on to this with Celtic's injuries, potentially neither of the first choice centre-backs playing. Kevin Van Veen's influence could actually mean, well, Alan's absolutely convinced Motherwell are going to score, put it that way.
Right, okay. I'll go on to Bet365 now. No, I think, listen, he's a good player. He's hot and cold. Otherwise, I don't think with his level of talent, he'd be playing for Motherwell at the end of the day. You know, I think he probably has got the talent to play at a higher level. But the reason he hasn't is because he doesn't put it together on a consistent basis. But I do agree, like with the two centre halves potentially being out for Celtic, Van Veen might be licking his lips a wee bit. And I think Alan's probably right. I think Motherwell will fancy themselves to get on the score sheet in this game. Just different. You spoke about those games, sort of last 5, and it's 15 goals to 1 or whatever. The sort of setup that maybe Graeme Alexander came with just to kind of stifle the game and kill it, I don't think that's what Celtic will come up against tomorrow at all. And I think, you know, conversely, that plays into Celtic's hands a wee bit. I don't think Motherwell can outscore them, put it that way. I think they'll come and try and go toe-to-toe, and Celtic just have got the better attacking players. So I fancy Celtic to come out on top. You on mute, Sean?
So I'm sorry. I'm saying I can see the logic, and whether it ends up one-sided, a high-scoring game, or a real dogfight in terms of trying to outscore one another. What you're saying about Stevie Hamill, it kind of chimes with what Ange Postecoglou says, which is if you're putting in place a style of play, there's no point in telling them, well, you can't actually do it against this, this, and this. Yeah. So that bodes well for me, and it also should really. I'm not really looking at it from a Motherwell point of view, but if it does go and try to play that kind of football when that's what he's saying he wants to play, that would actually bode well for them as well, even if they don't come out on the right side of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if it's an influence that Ange Postecoglou is having in the league, the way he's talking, but I do see huge parallels between the sort of rhetoric that Stevie Hamill's coming out with and what Ange comes out with. You know, it's very similar. I think there is an element of realism. You can't just go to Celtic Park and play, you know, 3 up top and go for it. But I think he will try and play attacking, expansive football because, as Ange says all the time, when Celtic go up to the Champions League, what's the point in then ripping up the game plan? You know, because then it means you don't believe in it, and the players will then get a sense that, you know, you don't believe in it as well.
Exactly.
So I think they will come and I think they'll attack, and you know, it's not going to be straightforward for Celtic. I think it could be some hairy moments, particularly early on. But as I said to you, I think just in the end, they're greater quality will show.
Jill Paul coming in, agreeing with you there, saying Motherwell will be difficult tomorrow. Anyone thinking otherwise is a fool. Retro Celtic, we want to start quickly tomorrow. If we can score early, then it will settle the crowd. I suppose that is not the crown. But I tend to agree with that for any Celtic game, really. I don't even think it is as much about settling the crowd now as it is opening up other gaps in the opposition if you score early, because they need to then come out and try and get something from the game, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's always key when a team goes to Celtic Park. Well, I say always, normally key when a team goes to Celtic Park, if they do have that defensive game plan, to try and break it early, because, yeah, it does become frustrating for the players, frustrating for the fans as well. But I agree with what Pegleg's saying there. I think the two teams will just come out the traps and go for it. So if Celtic get the first goal, yeah, I think it could be a turkey shoot. If Motherwell score first, it could be anything. You know, it really could.
Sons of Scotland saying Motherwell won't come and roll over for us. They will be looking for at least a point. Is it Matthew Penny? Plays
Matt Penny, yeah.
Matt Penny that plays in defence, is it? He was talking yesterday. He basically says what you said at the start. The Hearts game did not tell the story of the way that they played and that they actually are going into it, knowing Celtic are going to be hurting and looking to bounce back from the St Mirren game. But he feels Motherwell will be getting into it thinking we're actually in decent form despite that last result and looking to get something from it, which is a good attitude to have. I'd rather see teams come to Parkhead and have that attitude than, well, think we can't get anything, so we might as well sit 10 behind the ball kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that as you look at the stats you've just mentioned there, Motherwell have probably adopted that sort of defensive mindset over the last few years, and what's it got them, really, you know? So I think you've got to come and have a go. And if you listen, Celtic have got a better team, so you know they might win, they might put 3, 4, 5 past you. You never know, but Rather that than hanging on and taking your 3-0 and get up the road, I think, even from a Celtic point of view, I think that's better for the fans to come and see these teams come and have a go and try and take Celtic on at their own game. I'll tell you something that is quite telling, I think. We went to the Scotland previews through in Edinburgh that started last week, and John McGinn was there, and he'd been to watch his brother Paul, who plays with Motherwell now. And he was raving about Motherwell when he came in, and it was the 3-0 game. And he said he couldn't believe it. He's like, I've never seen a 3-0 battering like that in my life. So they're starting to, people are starting to take note that they are giving it a go. And I think it'll be entertaining for the fans, whatever way it goes tomorrow. But I do think, as I said before, I think Celtic will just get the greater quality, and that'll probably tell in the end.
Kevin McKenna wrote an article for us, I think maybe a week and a half ago, on that kind of notion that surely fans, he was kind of having a go at the Jim Goodwin's comment about the gap in resources between Celtic and Ria. Well, now they know how it feels, that kind of thing. Yeah. Kevin had a wee bit of a go at that by saying he would rather see, and he thinks fans of other teams would rather see their own team coming with their own style and having a go rather than just settling for, well, this won't define our season and we'll get beaten, come up the road, that kind of thing. And that kind of ties in with that. But in terms of Paul McGinn, that brings me on to one of my last kind of Motherwell focused questions, which is, I think Stevie Hamill's still got them playing a 4-3-3 as far as I'm aware, but looking at, all right, wasn't this in the last game, but the few games before that, big Stephen O'Donnell on his wrong side playing left back, is that right?
It was for a couple of games, yeah, until they brought this guy Penny in that was talking during the week.
So is it unlikely O'Donnell will play there then?
I don't think O'Donnell will be. I think he'll go on the bench. I
was thinking that would be an obvious kind of area to target if he's on his wrong side, that kind of thing. But
yeah, I don't think so. The boy Penny, I think he was named their player of the month last month, so he seems a good addition. He's on loan from Ipswich, I think. So yeah, he'll be playing a left back. He's a natural left back. So, but I do think, just defensively, Motherwell can be got at. Hearts proved that. They had 3 attacks and scored 3 goals against them, So defensively, there are massive question marks there. So as much as we do say Celtic might be struggling at the back, I think defensively, Motherwell, that's where their big concern is. And I fancy that the Celtic attackers can really take advantage of that.
Coming on to Celtic now, specifically in terms of injuries and stuff, David Bradley puts a comment in that leads us on to that. He says, Sean, I think teams will just try and keep pumping the long ball into the box to see if Welsh and Yents, because we're presuming that's probably going to be the starting pairing, can handle it. And he says he's a wee bit worried about the defence in general from that. Now, you're suggesting maybe they won't pump long balls into the box, but nonetheless, you would expect them to try and test the 2 centre-backs, given what happened against St Mirren, even if it's in a different way. Do you agree that's probably going to be the 2 guys starting at the back, given the situation with Carter Vickers and Starfelt?
I do. I think that will be the 2 that starts. And even though Motherwell don't play that sort of direct style anymore, I do think that set pieces will be setting alarm bells ringing. I feel like we've been saying this about Celtic for about 10 years, but maybe longer. But I do think you look at the St Mirren game, you look at the goals they lost. I know the first one's not a set piece, but it's a cross into the box and a header. The second goal's a long throw, and Celtic just don't deal with it. They weren't aggressive enough. And I'm a big fan of Yents and Welsh. I think they've got something to offer, but as a pairing, I just think they weren't aggressive enough on the day. I think they allowed themselves to be bullied a wee bit. The thing about Motherwell is they don't really have this kind of wrecking ball strikers, if you like, that St Mirren did. Your Curtis Mains and Ayunga. But Van Veen's physical. They've brought Louis Moult back, the scourge of Celtic Park for 2015. And even though he's these injury problems, when you do see him, he's filled out physically, really went down south. So they can be physical if they do put that personnel on the pitch. It'll be interesting to see how Celtic cope with it. But I do have major concerns about the way Celtic are defending their area when it comes to kind of cross balls and even just simple things like that long throw. The second goal, I think it's St Mirren Park, was criminal from that point of view. They had 3, maybe 4 chances to clear the ball before it ends up in the back of the net. So I'm sure Stevie Hamill and Motherwell would have watched that game as well.
Ian McIntosh referring to the kind of the assumption it's going to be Yents and Welsh, saying if the 3rd and 4th choice centre backs can't handle Motherwell, they really shouldn't be at Celtic, in my opinion. I suppose it depends on the context of each of the games, innit? If it's a different proposition, they might actually prefer playing against Motherwell that play like that compared to St Mirren, as you say, that they play the more physical style. they should be able to handle both. Carter Vickers, for instance, doesn't matter really what kind of opponent it is that he comes up against. Starfelt, you could argue, prefers the physical one, actually kind of getting back to the basics of defending. But nonetheless, the role of a Celtic centre-back to me is one of the most responsible roles in football, really, given how much possession you usually enjoy, how much responsibility you need to take on your shoulders to progress the ball through the thirds, and also basically guard the massive space behind you that's there at times because you're camped in the opposition half. So I take Ian's point, but I do think that context is everything when it comes to each individual kind of contest that they face.
Yeah, and I also think that what's another factor is the third and fourth choice centre backs. They may be, if it was the third choice centre back with the first choice, fourth with the second choice, that might be a different proposition. But the two of them together, I do think opposition teams will smell a bit of weakness there, and they're not obviously used to playing together that often as well, which is another factor. So I don't think it's an area of mild concern for Celtic tomorrow. But as I said before, at Celtic Park, I would expect that the centre halves for the most part will be trying to play the ball rather than worrying about defending. So it might not be that big an issue.
Ian, there was a comment earlier on referencing what you says about depending who the pair is as well, and it was actually Ian himself saying you can get away with any of the centre backs playing if Carter Vickers is also playing, but it's different if he's missing as well, and then you're mixing and matching that kind of thing. Like Stephen Welsh spent most of last season playing left centre back when he got game time. He's now come back in on what was his kind of more natural side, the right centre back. Jens is kind of 2-footed, so he doesn't mind what side of the back pair he's on. I would still say he holds on to the ball slightly too long when he's carrying it out, but nonetheless, I think the two of them individually have started the season well enough, but as you say, as a pair, they're not used to it, which is half the battle when you're a defensive pair.
Yeah, definitely. I think the thing about Jens, I really like him. I think if anything, I think he looks a wee bit more comfortable on the ball than Julian did. I think I like Julian, but that might just be the eye test. I'm not sure what the numbers are saying, but I like Jens. But what he said when he first arrived was that he had to work and bring an aggression into his game from when he was younger. And he said he'd done that. Now, I think he does have a bit of aggression in his game, but I think in Scotland you've got to be that wee bit more aggressive again. And it's the similar question marks we had over Julian at times, his aggression defending his own box. So it'll be interesting to see if he's learned his lessons for that St Mirren game, because I do think that was probably the telling factor in the result in the end.
Interesting you say that, because David Bradley's mentioned that exact word, aggressiveness, about Stephen Welsh, not Maurice Jens, but you could argue both. I mean, Welsh is still, I know he's 22, but he's still learning as a senior player, if you know what I mean. I say this with Mikey Johnston all the time, just because they've went past 20 doesn't mean in terms of actual minutes in the legs they are that age as a senior pro, that kind of thing. So I thought before the season Welsh might have been considered for a loan. That was pretty cold water was poured on that pretty quickly. I think Ange Postecoglou saw him as a good option to have, even if he wasn't going to play a lot. But I still think occasionally you do see that, not immaturity, but lack of experience in the senior game still. There's a lot of comments about how many changes Ange Postecoglou made in the St Mirren game. From the start. Wasn't so much the rotation for me as it was who had to drop out. And I know Carter Vickers was out because he was injured, but it was more not the numbers that were rotated, but where was rotated and who was put in their place. I still think Turnbull and Moy in the one midfield did not work. That's not to say that individually one or both of them maybe could have a role from the start, but for me that just didn't work in that game. There's a lack of creativity. But we'll talk about the injury status in general. It's not so much a crisis now, I wouldn't think, as maybe it felt earlier in the week when it was up to 8 people were meant to be affected. But nonetheless, it seems like the likes of Yakimakis and Haksabanovic, while not regular starters so far, still Yakimakis especially a key player, might still be out there, weren't in training. Sure, we'll ask Ange about that later on in the presser. But Dyson Maida was there, Graeme. He was in training. So that bodes well, even if for any reason he's maybe not available for Saturday. No suggestion of that. But I think Leila Bada playing for Israel under 21s, would you say that's both a blessing because he was fit to play and a curse because he played well into extra time?
Yeah, it's always that question about international football, isn't it? The thing Ange used to be an international manager, so you won't hear him moaning about it, but I do think that, you look at the scale of Celtic's injuries this week that have come from that, and some of the concerns, like Dazen, like Lyle. And yeah, it's the price I guess you pay for having these top level players at your club. But I think it's good news that Maeda he seems to be in training, he seems to be okay, because if Giakoumakis is out, you're I know Maeda doesn't technically play up front a lot of the time, but Kyogo very rarely plays a full 90 minutes.
Exactly, yeah.
And I don't think you can kind of rely on him to do that, especially when he's been on international duty as well. So it'd be good to have an option just to freshen that up if you can, and maybe push Maeda up there late in the game just to use his legs. So to go back to your point about the St Mirren game, I do agree. I think the changes that were made, I think bringing Moy and Turnbull, and I like both players, especially Turnbull, who I've got a lot of time for. The problem with them is they don't move the ball very quickly, and I think that really upsets Celtic's rhythm in the game to have two of those players in there. I think I made this point to Tony last week maybe, but I think you can have, maybe one of Hatate and O'Reilly in there at all times.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Plus one other, so you can have Moy in there or you can have Turnbull in there. But I don't think both really works at all. So I don't think we'll see that again, to be honest with you. Maybe in the first rounds of the Cup or whatever, you might see it, but I don't think we'll see it in the league, and I don't think we'll see it tomorrow.
Scott Robertson saying no chance of Bader's burnt out from one match going to extra time. That's not really what I meant. He was taken off for the senior team with a muscle strain, and then did get put in the under-21s, but played deep into extra time. So I'm just thinking not so much burnt out, but if he had a muscle twinge and then playing extra time and then coming straight in at the starting lineup, that kind of thing. Maybe being overly cautious, but that's my kind of train of thought with that. What is your expectation then, Graeme, if you had to kind of second guess the team? I don't want necessarily a full 11 from you, because there's some that obviously name themselves: Joe Hart, Greg Taylor, in my opinion, although somebody said Alexandre Bernabeu would play. Callum McGregor, obviously, Jota. Myself and Aidan will put out our own up as an article later on, but it's difficult a task as it might. Is it as difficult a task as it might seem? Because I don't actually think it is.
No, I think probably it goes back to, get the guys who are fit, your main players back in there for this one. Like say Jota, he's had a rest now, so he can go and he'll be fresh. I do agree with you. I think Greg Taylor will play. I don't see any reason why Bernabeu would come in for him. I know he's played a couple of games for Scotland there, and he was let me say as well, he was fantastic in those games for Scotland. So on Greg Taylor, I know you're a big fan of him. But who'd have thought?
I do have that reputation, right?
So who'd have thought that Andy Robertson and Kieran Tierney were out for Scotland during the week, and you barely noticed. I think Taylor was really good, so he'll definitely play. There is a question mark. Maybe Ralston could come in for Juranovic, I guess, on the right. Give him a game. But with the disruption at the centre of defence, maybe Ange will be reluctant to do that. Yeah. So I think probably Juranovic gets the nod. Midfield, I think we'll see going back to kind of that'll be your axis of McGregor, Hatate.
I still have. I mean, I said that pre-season. I think that is the first choice three, unless one of two things happens, unless there's an injury crisis in that area, or unless I'm thinking specifically maybe David Turnbull here comes onto a right good game and you need to have him in, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think at the moment those are the guys in possession of the jerseys, absolutely. It was interesting. Spoke to Jesper Sorensen yesterday, the Denmark manager, and he could not believe how good Matt O'Reilly's been for them. I think it's probably like most of us when he came in January, we didn't really know what to expect, and he's hit the ground running, and he's done the exact same thing at a national level. So, we've heard all the stories about the interest in him, and he does believe one day he'll go and play in the sort of Premier League, but that's the quality he's got. So I think O'Reilly, whenever he's available, I would have him in the team, and Hatate as well. I mean, I think he's been a player reborn since the start of the season, so you've got to have him in there. And McGregor, I know he's playing all the time, but you've seen his comments during the week. Somebody asked, "Would you like a rest for the Scotland game?" He said, "Oh no, I play 70 games a season. It's fine."
I know, but like at some point, I've bleated on about this for a while. Like, and this is what David's saying. He wants good running legs. Callum McGregor has played too much. He does play too much. Like, there's no getting away from it. He does play too much. It's a credit to him that he's so undroppable, even in a team that's got good depth. But and for Scotland as well, he's undroppable as well. But I do wish at some point somebody took it out of his hands sometimes. Yeah. But I do feel that really the only way he's going to get rest is if he comes off early rather than doesn't start.
Yeah, I think on the back of defeat last time out as well.
Oh no, there's no chance in this game.
McGregor starts every single day of the week in this game, so he's definitely starting, I think. And up top, Kyogo, Jota, and Abada for me.
I think you've probably nailed my my team there. I think Juranovic is in for me definitely. I think, but I think you've pretty much nailed my team. I'll need to give Aidan a wee nudge to pick somebody different. I think. But, somebody put a comment here. It was Scott Robertson saying he's got a funny feeling Oliver Abelgard takes Starfelt's place this season. I don't see that happening out with another injury crisis. Graham, that's left centre back for a guy who has played at the back marginally in his career, but as a centre mid by trade.
I think Abelgard's been signed for the purpose we just spoke about, and it's to give McGregor a rest now and again. I think that's why he's there.
What do you think about tomorrow? Any minutes? A start? No?
I don't think he'll start. No, I don't think he's ready for that. I think he's kind of in the position I guess Moy was a few weeks ago, where he has to kind of try and get his match fitness back. So, listen, we might see him later in the game. If the game is going well and Celtic are 2 or 3 to the good, yeah, I think there's every possibility you could see Abelgard, because I think Andrew will be wanting to get him in the lineup and get minutes in his legs as soon as he possibly can.
Nice one. Right, I'll come back to you for a score prediction, because I know we've already went 25 minutes, but I'm going to ask you about an article that you wrote for the Herald earlier on the day, right? Wanted to chat to you about it anyway, but you so have to write an article about it as well. So the new TV deal, and I can almost hear some of the viewers going, "Oh, he's not going on about this again, is he?" But you wrote a piece for the Herald today about it. The regulars on here, as I say, will have heard me talk about it at length earlier this week. But since I did say about that, the club kind of pay-per-view streaming details have been confirmed, because I was saying it had been talked about before, and then it was kind of conspicuous by its absence in the lead up to the actual announcement, which did confirm it. But there was also a pretty intriguing comment from Neil Doncaster about it being put out to tender, but not really being put out to tender, was it? So what's your thoughts on it as a whole, and that comment in particular?
I'm a positive guy, and I'm trying my very best to be positive about it. Listen, first and foremost, I think in terms of the tender process, there is a kind of, how do I say this? I don't want to say arrogance, I'm not sure that's the right word, but I think there is a sort of incredulity that we're questioning the fact that it's not been a proper process from the SPFL's point of view. I think from Neil Doncaster's answer, you can read into it that they were obviously speaking to what they see as the major players in the market, your BT Sports, your Premier Sports through Viaplay. And they've obviously not had the indications at that point that there's going to be a big deal coming their way from those guys. But to my mind, I think you've got to take it to market formally. You've got to try and get the best value and not just kind of grasp at the first thing that's put your way. It's locked the league in now till 2029. And the very best they can do out of that is 30 million a year. Now, it's not 30 million a year from next season. I think that's a kind of misconception as well. It ramps up to that by the end of the deal. So did they get full value? In my book, we'll never know, because it was never taken to market, really. You know, even though they've had these back channel chats, if you like, and secret meetings, I think there's got to be greater transparency in terms of the bidding process. And I think privately, although they would never say it, I think probably these companies who have been locked out, if you like, are probably feeling the same. In terms of the streaming issue, I think it's a bit of tokenism, maybe. You know,
that's my opinion. Yeah,
I don't understand the point of view of Dave Cormack for Aberdeen saying that, you know, streaming services will affect attendances, because number one, we know that it doesn't in other countries. And the argument that Neil Doncaster's tried to make is that the UK is somehow unique in that regard. However, we've had a test case season. The season we came out of COVID, the pandemic, clubs were still allowed to stream their games for the entire season while fans were in. And I don't know, I may be wrong, but I don't remember empty seats and grounds because of that. So I think it's two separate things. And I think there's a wee bit of kind of backwards thinking. You know, it's very much sort of let's protect the attendances, when I don't think they're protecting something that's an issue that doesn't exist. You know, I think if you open up streaming, it gives fans greater options. Sometimes fans can't get to games. You look at what happened with Celtic at Ross County earlier this season, when you couldn't see the game unless you were at it. or you were totally at it with IPTV. So, no, I mean, hopefully the 5-game thing, the clubs embrace it and they try and make it as, widely available and as professional as it can be, and we can show the SPFL at that point that they should be widening this out and making it a staple of the TV deal rather than a tack on at the end.
I agree with pretty much all of that, and I think everybody that heard me earlier in the week will know that was pretty much my opinion on it. What I would say is in your Herald article, you compared the way that various parties approach this kind of thing as like the relationship between the gangsters and Reservoir Dogs, didn't you? So I suppose who's Michael Madsen in this scenario and who's strapped to the chair of Taylor's wheel playing is what I want to know.
I was going to say, Clowns to the left is Jokers to the right. But no, it is kind of like that, I think that Neil Doncaster's an unpopular figure, and I think the reason he's in his position, and he has been for so long, is that he can take the flack that the clubs normally would take themselves. Because you do have to remember, 41 of the 42 clubs voted for this. I see the comment there from FS saying clubs took cautious option with cash secured. 100%. I think that's where it is. I think clubs have thought the options on the table. There's still a wee bit, as I said in the piece, I think the hangover for that whole Setanta, disaster is still in the back of people's minds, and I think they've taken the easy option, if you like, that's there. And Sky takes a lot of stick, but they have put their money where their mouth is. And in the last deal, they were the only ones prepared to pony up anything like the sort of dough that was required. So, you have to kind of give them a bit of credit for that.
No, I mean, I'd agree with you. Helen says here BT was better coverage and stuff. I agree. I think BT did, and arguably, even though they've not got their heat, still do with Scottish Football Extra and stuff. I still think that they did a really good job. But that's kind of by the by when BT didn't put up the money for it. So, at some point, you do need to say, well, Sky were the ones that wanted it at that stage. This stage, I still think, I agree with you. You need to go to market with it. You need to put it out to tender properly, not, well, people knew it was there if they wanted to bid, that kind of thing. You need to actually say it's there, give us your best offer, that kind of stuff. And ultimately, I think I'll put it up again. I think FS is right. That is what clubs done. And I mentioned this the other day that it's kind of par for the course when there's a big thing in Scottish football that clubs will take the safety first approach a lot of the time. You've seen it a lot during COVID. You've seen it just in general. I mean, as I say, I always reference this. Back when they were talking about restructuring the league, the assumption from a lot of fans was it would go to like 16 teams, 18 teams, whatever. And they went away and come back with the proposal that it would go from 12 to 10. And you're going, well, what was the point in having a chat? That kind of thing. So I do get it. I get it. And I take your point, Neil Doncaster, because he's the figurehead, takes the flack, but it is a members' organisation, as you keep saying.
Yeah.
They vote for it. So
absolutely. And listen, I can see both sides here because it gives Neil a very convenient out when he's taking stick to say, well, the club's voted for it. But at the same time, he's got to take responsibility as chief executive, But there is a tendency, whatever Neil Doncaster comes out with, people are going to shoot it down. And whilst I don't really think this was the best deal we could have got, and I think there's aspects of it I would certainly change. At least there is a deal in place at the moment. And maybe this is giving them a huge benefit of the doubt. It probably is. But obviously they had the independent report into Scottish football by Del Watt, if you pronounce it that way. And the stated aim is to get to £50 million a year by 2029. So if this deal in place lets them do the kind of donkey work in the background to do that, and by that I mean a centralised marketing function from the SPFL, it becomes more active in terms of promoting the league, branding it. I think Scottish football is brilliant. I love it. And I think obviously the quality sometimes isn't always there, but there is a unique selling point to Scottish football, and that it's just a wee bit mental. You never quite know what's going to happen. It's exciting to watch. The fans per capita, as we all know, were the best supported league in the whole of Europe, and it's not even close, by the way. Celtic and Rangers obviously play a huge part in that, but I just think the passion, the drama of Scottish football, for me, I'd rather watch that than the EPL every day of the week. So I'm hoping they can kind of get that message out there, and so by the time that it actually does come to the end of this particular broadcasting deal, we'll be going to market and people will be biting their hands off to try and get a slice of the pie, and hopefully we can at that point not only get more money but improve things for fans like the streaming services as well.
before we get to the end of this particular broadcast, I'm going to ask you for a score prediction. Do you want to go first or want me to go first?
I'll go first. I think it will be 4-1 to Celtic.
Away you go. That's what I've got written down. Alan Morrison's preview on the site totally convinced me it's going to be high scoring. So you've went 4-1. I'll go 4-0, and then I'll say that he's wrong and Motherwell won't score. Plenty of comments coming in. David Gillespie as well going 4-1. Retro Celtic 2-0. Aero 4-0, same as me. Jerry McCann 4-1's a popular one here.
Yeah, I think that's it's kind of borne out by the way the teams have been playing. I think, as I say, I think Motherwell will come and try and score. I think they might be able to because the Celtic's defensive issues more than anything else, probably. But as I say, Celtic will find the net at least a couple of times.
And we'll end on Frank's note. Any kind of win will do, as always. Nice one. Or even better, Scott Robertson. Imagine this was true, 9-8. There you go. under
I hope no, because I'm working on the game tomorrow, so I hope no.
Well, that's an easy match report. It's just goal scorer after goal scorer.
That's the scorers, 800 words.
Right, I think we'll call time there. We've went over what we usually do, but thanks for your contribution, Graeme. Always appreciated when you come on. Thoroughly enjoy it. Thanks also to all of you who threw in comments and questions. Great stuff as usual. Remember to check the website over the weekend for the likes of detailed player ratings, post-match reaction, data analysis, and a heap more. We've got interviews and all sorts going up. So you can get full access to everything on there for £1 for 2 months. So enjoy your weekends, and we'll catch you back here on Monday. Cheers.
Cheers.